In this video, I want to talk about the modify selection commands. Now these are found underneath the select menu, and you have several of them, but I've got to make a selection for them to become active. So we have border, smooth, expand, contract, and feather. And what these are going to do is take in some value, some number of pixels, and they'll perform some sort of editing operation on your current selection. So let's just start with border. First off, we're asked for a width in pixels, and we're going to set this to 10. And click OK, and check out what we get. We'll go ahead and zoom in on it. We get a 10 pixel border around our original selection. Now our original selection line is centered up on that, so it's kind of like we got 5 pixels on the outside and 5 pixels on the inside. Also notice at the outer edge we get a little bit of rounding by default. So if I take my foreground color and set it to red and hit Alt and hit Delete to fill that in, you see what we get. There's also a softening effect. It's also kind of like a precise fall off at the corners. It's not the prettiest thing out there. To be honest, I generally only use this command with very few pixels at a time. So for instance, if I know I need to select literally like a 1 pixel border around something, I will select right inside that, and then you can just go to select and then modify and just grab a 1 pixel border. It's pretty straightforward. But it's one of those things, kind of a special edge case. Next we have smooth. Now to show how this works, the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of zoom in on our selection. You see it's a standard rectangular marquee selection. Let's go under select, modify, and smooth. And we get a sample radius value. Let's set this to 5 and click OK. And take a look at those corners. They just became rounded. So if I hit Alt and Delete to fill in, basically that just rounded the corners of our selection by a little bit. It is not anti-aliased though. So let's go ahead and Control Z a couple times, Control D. We'll drag out another marquee selection. Go back under select, jump down to modify. We have expand. This is going to take your selection and is going to push it out by however many pixels you plug in here. So if we set this to 10, our selection is now 10 pixels bigger than it was, but because of those corners, again, we're getting some rounding, so just be aware of that. Let's hit Control Alt Z a couple times and Control D to deselect. Make another selection. Go back under select, go to modify. Let's take a look at contract. It does exactly the opposite. So we'll contract by 3 pixels, and our selection is 3 pixels smaller. That's really, that's it. Very, very straightforward. Next we have feather, and we've actually seen the effect of feather in the settings for our marquee selection tool, but if you need to feather something after the fact, you can do it here. I'll set this to 10, and now notice we get some rounding, but if I hit Alt Delete to fill, you'll notice we have this kind of fade off around the outside, and that's the result of your feathering. You're basically taking those outermost pixels and you're saying we don't want to select those 100%. We want a fall off to our selection. So let's undo that with Control Alt Z a couple times and then hit Control D. That is a look at the modify options. They're just ways that you can perform specialized changes on your selections. The ones that I find myself using more often than not are expand, contract, and feather. I don't think I ever really need smooth, and I virtually never use border. I think I've used it in a couple of special cases for web design stuff, and that's been pretty much it. But as a random example, let's say you have selected, let's actually go with contiguous, and I've just selected the pixels here inside this area, and maybe they're overlapping by a little bit too much. You can go to select, modify, contract by say 1 pixel, and pull those down inside, and that result may be a little better for whatever it is you're trying to do. So generally I find myself using this in more of a subtle fashion than what I've demonstrated here, but I did want to make you aware of these modifications and show you how each one of them works. However, that is going to wrap things up for this video. Thank you very much for watching.